Hello class, we'd like to continue today on with Unit D, Voting and Voting Rights, by taking a look at sections 3 and 4 in Chapter 6. So make sure you've read Chapter 6, sections 3 and 4 in preparation for this short lecture. A couple quick things mentioned earlier in the previous lecture was the expansion of the voting rights. And one of the things that we talked about was the 15th Amendment shortly after the Civil War, which says that you cannot deny any citizen the right to vote on account of race, color, or previous servitude. Some of the early civil rights legislation then that we're going to be discussing and also working on activities in class are going to center around the civil rights movement in the late 50s and early 1960s. In response to discontent by those who felt they were disenfranchised, the United States created the Civil Rights Commission. And this commission then investigated and reported on voter discrimination going on, particularly in the South. The Attorney General then was given the power to give court orders in order to interfere in elections and allow people to vote. The civil rights movement continued and pushed for more and more legislation, such as federal voting referees and other things to try to ensure safe and honest elections. Eventually, shortly after the assassination of John F. Kennedy in 1963, his successor, Lyndon B. Johnson, took up the banner of the civil rights movement and pushed for quick passage of the Civil Rights Acts. And of course, this was made possible through the work of Lyndon B. Johnson, but was set the stage by President John F. Kennedy. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 then continued after some of the violent responses as well to various civil rights activities led by Dr. Martin Luther King, and then the response of the white people in power who did not like those tried to restrict voting even further, and this showed that there was a real problem with allowing people of color to vote, particularly in the South. So we as Christians then need to prepare ourselves to give an account for our own feelings on this based on the Bible. The Bible clearly teaches that God is not a respecter of persons, and neither should we. The government then, which rules with authority from God, is responsible to treat its citizens fairly and not discriminate based on race. In Acts 10, verse 34, the Apostle Peter makes this clear. So the wrong view then is that slavery should be based on race, and that the African race was somehow inferior to the Europeans. Also, the mistreatment of slaves was wrong. The Bible does not condemn slavery as such. Some societies did engage in slavery, for example, in Europe and in Africa and other parts of the world, but not based on race only as being inferior. Slavery today is not part of our culture, so it's illegal, but also it would be wrong to engage in slavery or exchange or purchase of slaves based on that. So those are some of the reasons why people began speaking out against slavery, because, like I said, the mistreatment and based on a lower view of people, which is sinful view of God's people. Some of the provisions of the Voters' Rights Act of 1965, shortly after the Civil Rights Act of 1964, you can see different challenges in the courts to these provisions. Has things improved? Certainly, the voting of Southern blacks has improved decade by decade. Today, it's not very often that you hear complaints of disenfranchisement by one group or another, although it's not unheard of. Despite all these efforts to expand the electorate and increase suffrage, millions of Americans don't vote. So unfortunately, the only way for a democratic republic to work is to get maximum voter participation. It particularly decreases in what we call off-year elections. An off-year election is an election when there isn't a presidential candidate. For example, in 2016 would be an on-year election because there will be a presidential candidate. There are many reasons why people don't vote, and these are all things, some are legitimate reasons, some are not. What I'd like you to discuss is, as a Christian, what is our responsibility to vote, and also what are some reasons why people don't vote, and is there any legitimate reason why people wish not to participate. Because voting is how you get into office, and as we learned in the last unit, political parties, their main goal is to win elections. Voter and voter behavior is one of the most studied things in America today. There are many focus groups where small groups of people come in and study, and they ask a lot of questions about what makes them vote this way or that way, everything from the way a person talks, or what points they make, actions they do, the way they dress, everything is scrutinized in order to win over voters. So voting behavior is something very heavily studied. The results of elections are poured over. Lots of research, billions of dollars are spent every year researching why voters don't vote or why they do vote and why they vote the way they vote. This brings up a topic of political socialization. How do you get to become the voter that you are? There are many factors, as you know, and we covered some of these last unit, but I'd like you to take a look now at these similar ones on what makes you vote the way you do. Less and less people, as we studied last time, are committed to a particular political party. More often people vote on candidates that they like or dislike rather than being committed to one party over against the other.